Welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar hosted by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. My name is Victor Trinidad with NCPMI. This webinar is part of the Within the Framework webinar series. Today's topic is Inclusive Routines in Early Care and Learning Collaborative Teams, presented by Jackie Joseph, Megan Cartwright, Alyssa Rausch, and Phil Strain. Thank you very much, and please begin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. For some of you who were able to be with us last week, this is part of a three-part series that we're doing on inclusive routines in child care or early learning settings. And today's focus is on collaborative teaming. We're really grateful that you're here with us today. And I'm just going to get us started with just some of our theoretical framework around what we think is what we talk about as collaborative teaming and what we know to be important aspects of it. So what we know is that within a setting, collaborative teaming means that there's really no way in which a family or a stranger coming into the setting would be able to understand who a provider is or what it is that they do there or how they engage with children, because every provider engages in role release and role sharing, meaning that they are able to accept the roles of others and they're able to give their typically defined role to others as well. It's really a place where disciplinary expertise is demonopolized in the sense that everybody learns it, everybody values it, and everybody practices it. And so whether it's a specific speech strategy, or whether it's the strategy of a physical therapist, that everybody knows and understands the value of that, and it's not just held with one or two people. Additionally, that in addition to the collaborative teaming, the family really drives that work forward. So regardless of role on the collaborative team, the family guides how those decisions are made. So it doesn't become incumbent on the providers to decide what should come next, but really is guided by the family and what it is that they want to see for their child. And again, just that idea that it's a place where all children are in community and all teachers or providers are in community together. And it's less about watching one person do something and more around how do we think about how providers can work together to make it a cohesive community. So I'm going to just provide you with a couple of examples of what this looks like. You all might have lots of examples on your own of how you see this, but here's just a couple. This is, just think about this picture. You see two adults here. One is potentially the speech language pathologist, and she is actually leading the circle time, right? She's reading the story. She might be working on phonemic awareness. She might be supporting children with individual speech sounds, all within this space. And then you see an adult in the background. And maybe that person is supporting data collection on how is it going with specific speech sounds, vocabulary, IEP goals and objectives. Maybe what you don't see in the background is that a teaching assistant is setting up the snack table with a specific feeding protocol for a child. So really this idea that it's not just one person's role to read a story or to collect data or to set up materials and adaptations, but it belongs to everybody. Another example could just look like a preschool classroom where there's blocks and children are working in blocks together. Perhaps there's some maps that have been created to give ideas around how to build and construct with blocks. And then there's also other teachers or providers who are there helping children who are ready for more academic learning to count blocks, to measure, to compare tall towers versus shorter towers, as well as perhaps an OT who's setting this up to specifically look at fine motor skills for a specific child who's working on a specific kind of grasp. And then finally, maybe there's another classroom where the teaching assistant is supporting a zone, right? And Jackie and Megan are going to talk a little bit about that later, but really this idea that anybody in the zone, so the teaching assistant is maybe helping children do some really targeted turn taking, some really targeted initiating turns, with the drum, and really creating a space for those social interactions to happen for all the kids who are there. So, so now that we have sort of talked about some of those examples, we're just going to show you a quick video of two providers who are talking a little bit about their experience with collaborative teaming.
And the day-to-day, pretty much it's a communication.
And observation of, we like to say we take a step back, and a couple of years ago everyone was saying OWL, right? So you observe and you wait and you learn about that student. So, and we do that all the time. And even during the day while we're observing, I'll pull Michelle and say, look what's happening. Yeah. Maybe tomorrow we can do this, or she'll do the same thing to me, like so-and-so needs a little bit more support at circle time today. So maybe we should make a social story. So let's do that. And actually we were just doing that yesterday. And she was teaching me how to make a better social story. So
just so it's consistent.
Yeah.
With the rest of our
Yeah. So consistent with all of our other books, which is awesome.
We like to make our own books.
Yeah.
So the kids take them, they have them personally or whatever. So that's how we put that stuff into site review.
Yes.
Into our weekly meetings. And then we'd come, and then she'd be responsible for it, and then we would implement it. And then we would go back the next week. How did that social story go?
And follow up with everything.
Follow up with that. But on day to day, it's very much like, look at what he's doing, So tomorrow, it looks like he knows how to stack blocks. So let's see tomorrow if we can add another play step in there. And just us discussing it regularly, talking about it, knowing which kids are good to go and which tables. Every morning we have a discussion where we put the kids in groups, and which peer models do we want, which kids that need a little bit more support, which ones go into this group. So there's no set groups. Every day it changes because our activities change, and we need the groups to shift and change, because the kids
That's
like
how
it
the
when
kids
they're in
are.
new groups.
Mhm,
Yeah, they like it when they're not at the same.
There's
space.
nothing that's stagnant ever. Really.
Yeah. And sometimes we're changing things at the last second, where I noticed that a bunch of kids, like, they're super interested in big, long tunnels right now. So let's make sure that this stuff is out, and let's make sure a teacher's over here to talk about what is gravity, like to ask questions and stuff, and not just, but OWL is a big thing we do too. Like, sometimes we don't want to interrupt what the kids are doing. We just want to watch, even if it looks a tiny bit risky. Maybe they're trying to carry something too heavy and they're about to knock something over, still like observing them and allowing them to solve their own problems. And that's another way we plan, where I will catch you and say, no, let them do it by himself. Let him do it by himself.
Right.
So, I mean, there's minute to minute plan.
And there's times where we take video, because we have permission to do that with all of the students. And so we take video and we're able to look at that video at another time, or it just helps us remember. And it also helps us do our assessment, our gold assessment as well.
So we always have phones, but we're always taking video.
Or
of the
iPads,
kids,
right.
Or iPads.
Yeah.
And uploading that into a Google Drive, a shared drive that.
So I love that video, because as we move into asking Jackie and Megan to share their experiences, what this video highlights is really the skills, but also the dispositions and behaviors of teammates who are collaborative. So as you look at the way in which they respond to one another and their suggestions, and the way that they have sort of normed their communication around being able to receive and share information with one another. These are really essential features for this for collaborative teaming. And so these two teammates really show that nicely, right? It's a little less about what they're talking about and more about watching the way in which they communicate and work together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie from the Rise School to get us started.
And the day-to-day.
Thanks, Alyssa. I really wanted to just highlight something that Alyssa told me for all of you in the beginning of talking about what we were going to talk about today. I said, I'm a little bit nervous because I feel like this session has more of like an aerial perspective of inclusion than our last one did. And Alyssa reminded me that, but what we're talking about in this session is absolutely critical for all of the things, all of the practices to happen in the classroom that we talked about last time. And then next time we'll get to kind of move to an even more aerial perspective in terms of what what childcare leaders can do and promote and support to really make inclusion work at all of the levels of their programs as well. So I did want to start by just giving you a quick, brief, very scaled down version of our very messy and circular place to where we were today. And we are the first to admit that we have not perfected anything that we're talking about, but we have learned a lot along the last 3 years, not even 3 yet. So in 2020, I was hired as the executive director. Megan, as she does, was actually the interim executive director at that point, or one of them, there were and really led us through those first few months of COVID while I had a baby who was just born, right? And so I started, and after that first year, we had a lot of turnover, and I think probably because we had to build trust, right? And then in which I'm deeming COVID year 1 and COVID year 2, I guess, in this timeline, Megan she said, I'm really feeling like, she was the assistant director and had some other positions. And then she said, I'm feeling like I'm really excited to go back into the classroom and really learn how to do inclusion right. And so we wrote a grant to work with the Pele Center, which is the center where Phil and Alyssa work, and to receive intensive coaching. So Megan's classroom started that in the summer of 2020, and another classroom did as well. And that was a messy year for all of us. It was hard, but we had this common mission that when COVID gets hard, we get better, right? We're going to commit to being a program that is collectively driven by this focus that we really want to become the best inclusion implementers, the best high quality inclusion program that we can. And that was our motto that first year. In Megan's classroom, met Fidelity and LEAP that first year. So we got that certified classroom, and also met Fidelity in the pyramid model. And then we moved into year 2, and we really learned that scaling up inclusion and really meaningfully moving toward implementing practices the way that they're designed in an evidence-based way was hard and tiring and challenging. And so we had to work together to figure out how to shift our mindset from resisting change or kind of feeling like things are always changing to really looking at it as though how grateful we are for this privilege to improve and for this privilege to continue to offer better and better inclusion, and to have people and leaders who supported us in terms of what professional development was meaningful for us, what time did we need to collaborate and communicate. And it was not easy because, as you see in year 2, our HVAC went out, our roof was leaking. We're a nonprofit. We have to raise money just to stay afloat. In year 2, we found ourselves in this place of having to raise an additional $150,000 and coming in on the weekends and holidays to flip a breaker switch so that the building didn't freeze. And still, we maintained that mindset because we all really had that very clear vision that scaling up and implementing high quality inclusion is really what we wanted to do. And so now that we're in year 3, well, I guess it was year 2, we started then scaling up LEAP and really working to implement both LEAP and the pyramid model more systematically in all of our classrooms. And so we are doing that program wide right now. And we're learning very much over and over the hard way, but we're learning and we're changing and we're growing in the meantime. So I would love to talk a little bit more about collaborative teaming at RISE. And these are the basics, and we put right now, because we're not saying that this is fixed for good forever. We use a lot of data at different levels, from child and family to classroom and program to community, to really make good database decisions to make sure that we're implementing the highest quality of inclusion that we can, or that we're striving to do that. And so our classrooms right now enroll about 30%-ish young children with disabilities, and about 70%-ish young children without disabilities. We do support young children with rare genetic syndromes, and who people oftentimes say are perhaps unlikely to be 100% and meaningfully included in their classrooms. So they would fall within like some people might say like an extensive support need, like if you had to categorize them, I guess, that way. My daughter, Juniper, is one of those. She's 4 and has a rare genetic syndrome, and she comes to RISE. And all of our educational and therapeutic supports happen within the classroom during our naturally occurring routines. We have a rule, and you'll see in a video in a little later, that we allow, and not just allow, encourage and love collaborating with external providers. And one of our norms and rules is, though, that if external providers come in, they embed what they do within our routines. We don't ever pull children out or away, and we offer them the time and support that they might need to be able to figure that out. And our classrooms include 3 adults. So we have our teaching team, a lead, and a TA, and then different rotating therapy team members that you'll hear a little bit more from Megan. And Megan is our inclusion director, and she coaches and supports all of our team members. And she'll talk a little bit more about how that's even changed as we've learned and grow. And then we just have a team who's committed to offering people the time that they need for compensating them. We have some hourly staff, and for compensating and committing to sometimes, offering overtime pay or things, because these meetings are very valuable and we want everybody to be a part of them. And then including, not last, really should be the first member of our team, families as critical team members, just like Alyssa said. So often in meetings, you'll hear us say, is that a priority for the family? Or, well, that's not a priority for the family, and their priorities really do guide and lead what we do. We collaboratively worked with some of our families who volunteered in our team to develop, a family partnership plan to really outline and operationalize what that looks like across everything. And here I would just want to take 1 minute to really emphasize the fact that inclusion only works when there's this collaborative team who are all committed to the vision of implementing high quality inclusion. I get to talk to so many people who have different types of inclusion teams, who oftentimes say, well, what do we do with this person who seems to be always coming up with reasons why inclusion's not going to work, or we shouldn't do inclusion. And I would just emphasize here that, of course, having people on your team, leadership teams, on educational teams, program teams, practitioner teams, is absolutely important. And we have lots of people who make inclusion hard enough outside of our teams. We don't need them on our teams who are trying to figure out this very complicated, convoluted space, right? And so we had a little bit of turnover in the beginning because we had some hard conversations around I respect you and your position, and I I respect the fact that this probably isn't the right team or the right place or the right spot for you to be in, and that's okay. And there are no hard feelings. And because we're implementing high quality inclusion, because this is all of our commitment, we are very clear in the direction that we're going and in what that will look like. And so I just really wanted to emphasize that that's just an incredibly important part. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, because this is a session on childcare, and then I promise I'll stop talking. I believe in the capacity of childcare to do this really hard work, and I know that we can. And I don't want anybody to be discouraged because you don't have this particular expert or this particular therapist. There's so many amazing resources out there, and there's different ways of completing professional development. And absolutely, we want expertise and collaboration. And I also wanted to say that if you don't have like the perfect team comprised, don't let that stop you. And what we found is that being a great inclusionist really is more about your commitment to inclusion and your willingness to grow and learn and change and collaborate, and less about your degree and your discipline. And it is about your program's commitment to providing you with the meaningful professional development and time to collaborate and things like that. But I just really want to say how much I believe in the capacity of childcare to do this amazing work. And it's an honor to be talking to y'all about how we're doing it. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a mic drop right there, I think. We could probably end the webinar now, and it would be, so thanks, Jackie, for that inspiration. And I don't know how to follow that with more theoretical information, but I'm going to try. So we've divided this webinar into some essential team processes that we really feel that are critical to support collaborative teaming. I'm going to provide a little bit of theoretical background around some of the team processes, and then we're going to really let Jackie and Megan talk a lot about exactly what that looks like and how they brought that to life. So one of the things we know about team processes that are important is communication. And Jackie's just covered a lot of these things, but the first one there being an intentional choice, being a vision, being this idea that wherever we are, whatever the financial model looks like, that we're making a choice to make this happen, and moving toward getting the right team members on board to help us to do that. And so communicating that intentional choice to everybody on the staff and in the community and with all the families is critically important. We also know that things like team norms around how we engage with one another become super critical, because as Jackie had talked about, and Jackie and Megan will continue to talk about, these conversations can be challenging, and we have to have difficult conversations. Complex problems don't have simple solutions, and so to get there, we have to have difficult conversations. And that means that we need to have an understanding of how we engage with one another, how we demonstrate respect for one another, and how we all think about how we enter into a space as all learners together. We also know that requires informal and formal meetings. We'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as planning and review of implementation. So sort of, we're going to plan for it, we're going to do it, and then we're going to think about, did it work? And reflect on that, and then we're going to respond based on those different results. So there's this really intentional communication process around, this is where we are, we're planning, okay, we're implementing, now how did it go? And so that's all very clear and concise within the team. There's this idea that communication is more than just talk, but it's actually knowledge sharing. So there's this idea that it's not just about talking with one another. That certainly is a very important team dynamic and important for communication, but really there's this intentional, strategic way in which we share information with one another so that everybody is learning and moving forward. And so whether that be knowledge sharing around a particular child's strength or family interest, those are all things that we would want to share. Child goals and objectives need to be very clear to everybody who's working in the classroom. What is each child working on? Things that we talked about last time, like routines to the third and embedded instruction, are also opportunities to sort of share knowledge amongst one another and have those conversations around, hey, I tried to do that and it was really hard. And we need to think about how maybe we need to change doing that. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of how do you come together as a team when there's behavior that is perceived to be challenging out there, and how do we really communicate and share knowledge around how are we going to support this child, and what do we need to do on our end in the environment or with adaptations or with our responses to make that important. Of course, there's also lots of tools and tricks that are shared within that knowledge sharing as well. And so, I want to go back and the photo that you see here is Jackie shared this photo, and it is a master schedule of the adults and where they are in the room at the different times of the day, or in the center at different times of the day. And what this does is clearly communicate to everyone, where is everybody? Where can I have a meeting? So in addition to those formal meetings, where can I approach somebody informally and say, hey, I need some help with this, or hey, I have some feedback, or hey, these are things that are happening within our environments, and we need to talk about it. And so this is a really just clear picture of where is everybody, and how do we, what are the ways in which we can communicate? And so this becomes a very nice tool, because Jackie pointed out that in some of these places, it's marked, I can't talk right now. This is my lunch time. This is my break. This is my time where I have to get paperwork done, whatever that may be. And that is it feels not collaborative, but that's actually not it at all. It's highly collaborative, because it sets boundaries and says, this is not a good time for me, but here are all the other times that work. And I need to make sure that in order to take care of this community, I'm also taking care of myself. So I just love this as a very clear communication tool where everybody can see that. Jackie, Megan, anything else to add? Okay. Finally, just again, this theoretical picture of, and Jackie's and Megan talked a little bit about this with their considerations, but just really thinking about who needs to be involved, and then how is that information disseminated. This is just one simple graphic or example of what this could look like. This very well could be different than what RISE does, but it just is a map for how are we going to have information flow to from families through all of these people, all these nuanced and complex things that need to be communicated with one another, to the children and to the providers that are actually on the ground every day. And so to really be intentional in thinking about how this model or a model might be really important in your to think through in your center before you embark on this work. I'm going to turn it over to Megan now, who's going to talk about communication at RISE.
Perfect. Thank you, Alyssa. So we, as a school, as RISE, really focus on transdisciplinary teaming as something that we're constantly trying to improve and grow in. And we always make the joke that really no one knows what they're doing when it comes to transdisciplinary teaming. But I think from our experience in the last couple of years, what we're really finding out is that it does differ from year to year, very similar to like what we talked about last time when we had mentioned that our routines of the third power are going to change from year to year based on our students' strengths, based on their preferences. The same thing has happened with our teaming here at RISE. So last year, we created lots of meetings that we really felt like we needed. We needed to have a lesson planning meeting for all team members to be present at for each classroom. We needed to have coaching meetings, rotating team meetings, knowledge sharing meetings. Honestly, the list went on. And then reflecting in our practices for this year, we really wanted to simplify the purpose behind each meeting. So why is it that we're getting together? What's the purpose behind it? And so we really broke down our meetings into the simplest forms. And what we worked together to decide was that we are going to have one transdisciplinary meeting per month per classroom. And this is to be led by the lead teacher. And then we would have one coaching meeting per month per classroom where the whole team is present. And we can always bring up other meetings as well. So any team member, and that includes families, can request for an additional meeting. And that does happen sometimes, whether it be, I really want us all to look at the data that we took for this week on this child and really create a team plan moving forward. We can all get together and set a time to do that, and utilizing the chart that Alyssa just showed, we can look at that to really guide when to have that meeting. And you'll see on the next slide how some team members can collaborate a little bit more individually or less frequently, in addition to participating in these team meetings that we just set. But my role as the Director of Education and Inclusion at RISE is to make sure that I'm coaching all of our practitioners, specifically on the practices within LEAP inclusion and the pyramid model. And in our coaching meetings, we really use the routines to guide the practices. So we walk through the routines to the third power that we set up at the beginning of the school year, and we really ask ourselves, how are each of these routines looking? Are there areas that are stellar and the students are really independent within that? Or are there times of the day that we really need to reflect and ask ourselves those 4 questions that we talked about in the last webinar? Are children and students able to answer, or I'm sorry, are teachers and children able to answer, what am I doing now? How do I know I'm making progress? How do I know when I'm finished and what comes next? And really working through and coming up with a collaborative effort to make the decision in the coaching meeting on a next step and how we can improve those routines. Oh, and then in this video, I actually had the opportunity. I think it's so cute. I think we're all ready for a video if you guys are okay with that. Part of my role too is to be able to offer our teachers planning time and reflecting on our time last year. This is something that the teachers really wanted. And so we built in 4 hours within the month that I go into the classroom and I sub for the teachers so that they have time to do some of those planning and prepare visuals and things like that. And this was a video I captured actually just a couple days ago in our 3- and 4-year-old classroom. I'll let you play it.
I don't like it. I don't like it. Come over here.
She said, yeah, come in. Good scooting. Hi. Slow kisses. Shosh was telling you, she's like, come into reading, come play with me.
There's a lot of things to do.
So we captured that video and we really wanted to share it with you all. One of the little girls in the video, her main mode of mobility is scooting. And that's one of the things she's really working on. And her buddy picked up on that and wanted to scoot right along with her and encouraged her to go into the book center with her. And it was just a really powerful, awesome moment. So we wanted to share that with you all. But as I mentioned on the last slide, we are actively working to create ways for all of us to meaningfully collaborate and communicate. And so we have a large in-service group that happens at the beginning of the year. And this in-service is developed from a really in-depth survey that the administrative team puts out to all of the staff. That includes all of our adjunct therapists as well as our full-time staff. And this year at this in-service, we reflected that we wanted to spend some time really diving into communication and collaboration in a way to make it meaningful for all of us. So we spent a good deal of our time at in-service really reflecting on what worked well and what didn't work well, and then coming up with some solutions and ideas moving forward. And so we broke down what meetings we felt like were important and necessary. And We also talked about information that may not be necessary for everyone to have, and what ideas can be answered in an email or across a meeting with less people involved. And so it was really nice to be able to have the time dedicated and allotted to being able to focus on exactly how we're going to make communication and collaboration work for our team. And as Jackie mentioned earlier, we do have a rotating therapy team. So this rotating therapy team will spend 2 days in a classroom and then rotate to another classroom, and a new therapist will come in, which offered a little bit of a hiccup in terms of being able to communicate all of the happenings or the debriefing of what was happening in that classroom on that day, because a new member was coming in. So we worked together to really decide on this daily debrief. And this is a 5 to 10 minutes in the morning before students arrive. Everyone gets together and they say, this is what's happening with this student at this time, and here's everything you need to know. And it's very quick, and it's just a quick way to catch up. And it was really nice because our administrative team made sure that they were communicating that this important meeting time was happening to families, and they created signs that we could put up on the door, and they really encouraged us to be able to take the time to close the door, and right at 8 o'clock, the doors will open up and families can drop off their students. So it was really nice to have that administrative support, and also has allowed us to have those quick, meaningful conversations. As another example of how we determined our collaboration norms as a team, in the past, we wanted to be really respectful of therapy team members' time, and felt like they were giving a lot of their time and didn't necessarily need any of the coaching time. But what we found was that when we would have coaching meetings, the lead teacher and myself, and we would talk about certain LEAP practices, the lead teachers felt like they were now responsible for sharing how they were going to embed LEAP strategies into the day. And then the therapy team members really felt like they wanted more support in doing that. So this year, our coaching meetings are whole team driven. Sometimes some therapy members can't make it, and that's okay, because we do offer really detailed notes to share, or we have really quick morning or office hours conversations to cover the things that they may have missed. But we do want to try and make it that the whole team is present and able to receive this coaching that's more practice-based led. And I think one of our biggest takeaways is really that inclusion takes a lot of communication and a lot of collaboration. And I don't think we knew to what extent in the last couple of years, but we're really learning just how to make it more meaningful, and that a lot of these things happen at a system level. And that's something that we'll talk about a little bit more in the next webinar. But we always joke that no one has the time to do any of these meetings, but we all find a time to make them happen because we really have, as Jackie said, made this commitment to communicate and collaborate, to really do inclusion. We all feel like we have this ethical responsibility, and all feel really privileged in the fact that we are able to work together to support all of our students in all of our classrooms.
I will briefly go through this, but to kind of comment on what Megan said, the joke about the transdisciplinary teaming, we realized that as we communicate and collaborate in all of these different ways, and Megan didn't actually go through like the ins and outs of every meeting, because you would be like, we don't really need to know this, guys. You got to make it work for you, right? We realized that we really needed norms and expectations for having challenging conversations when they occurred. If you're implementing inclusion and you're implementing it with practitioners and providers and therapists with all different perspectives, you're going to have differences of opinion and thoughts, and what we really determined was that we needed to come up with a process, a routine, if you will, for how to do that, right? And so inspired by Brene Brown, we developed Rise's rumbling process. And we use rumbles for making decisions that will put more work on somebody else's plate that's not our own, that will develop or identify a timeline for somebody else, for things that, sorry, I just totally lost my brain for a second there. It's basically like if we're making a decision that's going to impact somebody else, we're using a rumble for it. We also use them for like interpersonal difficulties that might come up, or different feelings, big feelings we might have. So we use them really for anything that feels a little bit sticky. And so this next slide is, I won't go through all of it, but it's just what we came up with that works for us. Like a little no wonder decide. So we say, the reason I called this rumble was this is my goal for what I want to happen, whether it's kind of a rumble between two people or through a whole team. And then we discuss what we know, like what's going on, what are our more objective things that we're observing. I notice this is happening, and most of the time what we're figuring out is that a lot of this discussion revolves around routines in the classroom, right? And that's kind of like a nice, less emotional way to talk about, like, I kind of feel like this time of the day is decomposing a little bit, or things like that. We talk about what's going well, and then we talk about the pain points, and then we have this kind of blue sky brainstorming part of it. Like, I wonder if we could do this. I wonder if we could do that. We're enormous that we don't say no to anything there. And then we move on and we make decisions collaboratively, knowing that that's like our first draft of whatever decisions that we're making, and we can expect feedback and changes. But it just really helped us to create a routine for having sticky or difficult conversations. And then when somebody says something like, I need to rumble, you know that you're kind of showing up in this way. Alyssa kind of mentioned that too, to know, maybe schedule it at a time where you'll be a little bit more open, rested, fed, things like that. I think you're up now, Meg.
Yeah. One of the things that's really important in terms of having these rumbles is making sure that we've taken the time to have these 5-to-1 deposits versus withdrawals. So we're really purposefully building our relationships, knowing that we say it all the time about the students in our classroom, that they learn and grow through relationships. And I think the same thing is true for adults. And it's really just a matter of making sure that we're taking the time to build the relationship, so that when it does come time for these really tougher conversations or this rumbling process, we know we're all coming from a really good place. I think it's also, this 5-to-1 process has really helped us kind of reframe our minds in terms of, what are the strengths that my coworkers or my team members are doing? And I'm going to take some time to really focus and call them out on those strengths that they have. We actually had asked team members last year, what is the way that, you're going to feel loved as a team member, or we can show our gratitude. And every single one of them had said that words of affirmation was a way that they would feel love and gratitude. And so we created a shout out board for both students and teaching teams and therapy team members, to really publicly kind of call them out for all the awesome things that we're doing, and help fill their buckets. So that was something that we really wanted to devote our time to prior to having these tougher conversations. The other thing, the routines promoting objectivity. It is really nice to go to a meeting and say, let's reflect on the routine specifically. We're not reflecting on who's not doing what job or what role or what responsibility, but instead we're simply walking through the day, finding some tougher parts of the day and asking ourselves, when does it seem like it's falling apart? What exactly is happening? Are we following the roles and responsibilities? Are we following the routines as designed, with learning and social engagement opportunities, and with the individual supports that we had all talked about? Most of the time, if we're struggling, the answer to one of those questions would be no. And even if there are emotional frustrations, they're typically related to one of these questions. So it really does just allow us to be really objective, knowing that we've already created these positive relationships to set us up for learning and growth. And now using those routines in an objective way allow us to commit to that growth.
I think this is you, Alyssa.
Yeah, so one of the other pieces that we wanted to talk about in terms of processes is what we talk about as consultation for how do we share knowledge with one another. And so again, from a sort of theoretical standpoint, I just wanted to present some ideas that Jackie and Megan are going to talk a little bit more specifically about. But oftentimes when we think about consultation, we think about this idea of expert over modeling, where a special education provider who maybe has specific knowledge and a degree around specific diagnoses or working with specific children or in a specific discipline might come in and explain or tell a provider what they should be doing. And really, when we're talking about collaborative teaming, we're talking about consultation in a different way. And so we're really thinking about it in these transformational ways. This is adapted from the Coaching for Equity and the Art of Coaching. And this is just one example of sort of norms that you can think about in the consultation process that give you a chance to think about, how do we all get into the dugout together? How do we all get into the arena together to do this, and dismiss some of those ideas of power over or expert over in terms of how we share knowledge together. So again, this visual just really reminds us of those important ways of being around how we enter with compassion, that everybody is here. We have made an intentional choice. We all want to do this. And so we come at this with compassion to every experience, to every Rumble process. That we also come at this with curiosity, right? So again, as Jackie and Megan shared, as Megan talked about that Rumble process, right? That there's really this aspect of wonder. So rather than finding a place where we spend a lot of time problematizing, let's spend a lot of time thinking about wondering about what solutions might work, and really using our creativity and innovation to dive into that process. The other thing is that we know that this is a process and it takes time and it's a messy process. So, and just knowledge of that process and trusting that the process will work, even at times where we feel like we're stuck, is an important way of being. Like, we're still going to stick with this, even though it's hard, because we believe that it's the right thing. Entering situations with humility and mutuality. Again, that's a real note to sort of speaking to the importance of not having those expert over models, but more having this idea of, I'm coming in and I might have this information and you might have this information, but how do we create a space where we both sort of let maybe our egos go and instead think about, how do we make this communication and engagement in a really reciprocal way that allows us both to grow. And then finally, really coming at this from a learner standpoint, right? We're all here to learn. We're all here to do better. That's what improves outcomes for kids. And that's what we know. So really coming at it from that process of, I'm not the knower and you're the doer, but that we're all learners in this process. And then finally, I think courage. I hope that Jackie and Megan are really good, as we move into this next section, can really show you and model that. They've modeled what courage means, right? To do this work and to really say, yep, we're going to do this and it's going to be hard and we're going to do it anyway. I love the statement, COVID gets hard and we get better, right? Courage. So with that, I'll pass it back off to Jackie. Or Megan, sorry.
No worries.
Okay. I actually just wanted to take this time to kind of share just a vulnerable story with you all about my experience in powering through and not over. So over the summer, I was reflecting and thinking about our teaching teams and all of this wonderful progress that our teaching teams had made. They had really solid routines. They were really embedding social opportunities, and I wanted to continue that growth. So I thought, okay, I'm going to send out an email thinking that we're going to stay on top of it. It's summer vacation. I just want them to be thinking about these things. So I sent them a list and was like, hey, I want you guys to recheck your routines, make sure that you're thinking about universal lesson planning so that all of our students can access all of this information, be thinking about more social opportunities. And I hit send on this email, this giant to-do list for them over summer, which none of the teachers wanted to receive, but I hit send and I felt really proud. And I was like, I am on top of it. We're going to hit the ground running as soon as we start this year. And I didn't receive a single email back from any of the teachers. And I was thinking to myself, and even talked with Jackie a little bit about, maybe that wasn't the best idea. And maybe that's not what the teachers want or need at the time. So we decided to send out this apology email of saying, hey, I did not approach that the right way. I basically gave you all a to-do list and had this power over idea. And hit the redo button and said again, like, hey, I'm so proud of all the progress that we made this year. I would love to continue the discussion with you all and see where you want to take that progress this next year. Get back to me and we'll set up a time to meet. Every single teacher responded and said, thank you. We all found times to meet and collaborate and really get a game plan going. So it was quite a powerful learning experience for me. But it was just really powerful. So yeah.
Want me to talk about this next?
Sure.
In interest of time, and I know Phil has asked for a couple minutes at the end, we can move to the next slide, Meg or Alyssa. We're all calling each other the wrong names today. We wanted to provide some examples, and y'all will have these in your PowerPoints, and these are fluid documents on our end, but this is just an example from one of our classrooms who designs routines based off of team members, or who did, although yesterday we had a meeting and this has already changed since we put it in. So not the same team members have the different roles or the same roles and responsibilities every week, but you can really see how it helps teams to get on the same page. They can sign up for different like zones or roles and responsibilities. And everybody really can be maximally involved and supportive of one another because their expectations are outlined in terms of what happens when minimally throughout their day. And then they can really capitalize on opportunities to use incidental teaching and naturalistic teaching because, the environment, the routines has become their additional teachers, additional adults in the room.
Can I just quickly
Please
add?
do.
I also really like that this teacher has added responsibilities and roles to the daily debrief so that during the meeting time, each of us have a responsibility to be present and ask questions. And I think that was a really important aspect too.
Yeah. This next one is just specific to a mealtime. We have one classroom who has a number of children with similar intricate and involved feeding plans, and we love doing all the nerding out on how to make them maximally successful. And so this shows, depending on where you're sitting or who you're with, how you're ensuring safety and meeting feeding plans with fidelity, and then different adults who are in the room can sign up on kind of like a whiteboard, like a marker board situation for the different zones depending on the day. This next slide is just an example of what Megan uses during her coaching meetings, and I love it, and I just wanted to give her credit for it. They use routines to really to consider during every coaching meeting in terms of routines. Where are we feeling secure and steady? Where are we feeling like we're slowly but surely building some momentum and doing well, so they can celebrate where they're secure and steady. They can maybe get some quick wins during those routines where they're slowly but surely improving, or slowly or surely they feel like they're getting a little bit more routine. And then they can spend a lot of time talking about where they're stuck and where they can collaborate and support one another. This next one is an example of, so every year in the beginning of the year, we have what we call routines meetings, where all team gets together who will be in the classroom on a daily basis, and they talk about what the different routines will be, what's generally going to happen in them, why, what different responsibilities will be, what what are opportunities to like practice various social skills or to be social during them, and then talking about the scope of over the next few weeks or months, we'll kind of slowly and systematically move. So expect the routines to be changing and growing and developing, which means our roles and responsibilities will as well, as we accomplish these different things that we have planned. This is a video that's cute. It's one of our Ladybugs teacher teaching a new routine. So it's not as child-led as what it will eventually be. And it's a bit more teacher directed right now, but we liked it because it shows her capitalizing on 2 adults in the room, one of whom is an occupational therapist at Rise, and the other one who is an external provider. She comes in to implement ABA services when she's at Rise.
To take the picture that I give her, put it on, and read it out loud. Our job is to watch and then do that part of the budget. Let's practice. Miss Kendra, here you go. Thanks, Miss Kenny. Hands on left. Nice job. Let's practice again. Miss Brooke, here you go. Bubble and mouth. Awesome job, Miss Brooke. Good job. Good job. Good job. Shoshi, your turn. Awesome. Awesome job, Shoshi. Harley, here you go. Awesome job, Georgie. Mookie, here you go. No.
Giggling because his pants fall off in the end, which is really silly. So also, my apologies for my monologue in the beginning that has probably moved us over time. We will fly through this last one because, we're not really, again, it's like beyond the scope of what we could talk about to talk about data collection, right? In a few moments, but the routines really do offer us the ability to zone our data collection so it doesn't fall on one person, that even when we're collecting assessment data, we divide that up across team members, or depending where you're playing, you might have different opportunities to observe different skills. And we do have the expectation that every team member participates in data collection, and it promotes the support of data through routines because it just becomes part of your process as well. And so this next slide is an example of how knowing what is involved in that like routine to the third power, you can take, for example, this would be like an occupational therapy type fine motor goal for a child, and embed it and really operationalize what it looks like in different centers or routines of the day, and then also provide the opportunity for the adult who's zoned in that area when this is occurring to collect data on it, so you're ensuring progress over time. And routines, really just emphasizing here, they are our cornerstone for collaboration and teaming. We hope you heard us say over and over today how most of our conversations and all of our reflections and lots of what we do go back to those really solid routines that we talked about during our last webinar, and then even creating more for ourselves because we love them that much. So I think Phil, you had a bit more to say right now as we end.
Yeah, so last week we briefly introduced you to 7 characteristics of administrators who had successfully maintained high degrees of fidelity in their inclusive programs over 2 decades. One of those characteristics was that they engaged in brave behavior, brave in the sense that they tried things and the consequences included some potentially risky consequences, but they did it anyway. And to close out, I just want to put Jackie on the spot and say, if you had to pick a brave act that you chose to engage in over the last almost 3 years, does one come to mind?
Sure. I did want to answer a really good data question really quick. I don't know if anybody did it in the chat. The data sheet of the OT that we showed, it's multiple opportunities to practice that skill throughout the particular time. We just operationalize what it looks like. And then it's like a perceptual rating. Like we don't circle one of those things every time they practice the skill in a discrete way, if that helps. But I do have one, Phil. And you can email us if you have more questions about those data. Yes, as I think a time when I surprised myself was, and I have gotten permission to tell this story before, so I'm not saying anything necessarily that I shouldn't be saying right now. I was in a board meeting, and one of our members on the board was really encouraging that we move away from our high quality inclusive ratios. We need to enroll or include more kids, and by doing that, perhaps we should enroll or include kids with less extensive support needs. And the conversation ended up getting pretty heated. I wasn't always proud of myself for that. But finally I kind of like took a deep breath and got myself together. And I said, we are committed to high quality inclusion. I need everybody in this room to know that I will no longer have this conversation. What you are talking about is not high quality inclusion. I am here to help us do that. If you move forward and decide that we want to having ratios that are not supportive of high quality inclusion, you need to know that you will move forward without me. And you also need to know that I don't want this to be brought up again, because this is the hill that I will die on. And I left thinking, cool, the board is meeting after that, and I'm going to get fired tonight. And that is great. And I did not end up getting fired at all. And I kind of learned about my own conviction and power, and that when I'm really sure that something is the right thing and really sure that we can do it and do it well, then I can be brave and build hills that I'm willing to lose my job on.
And there ends the second mic drop of this webinar.
Oh, sorry, Meg, were you going to say something?
I think that Jackie has a team to support her in that decision. I think it's really nice because Jackie, who is in the arena and living these moments every day, has all of these pockets of information to take to that hill. So she has, this knowledge base and this education. She has the knowledge of working with teachers. And I think that she had a team of people and this idea of trajectory of where we wanted to take Rise. And she, was willing to put her job on it and had a team of people supporting her in that decision.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Maggie. Like I'm not taking credit for that at all, right? Oh no, I know that we're taking credit. But I think that people forget that inclusion and implementing it with high quality is of course what we know is best for kids with disabilities. We also know it's what's best for kids without disabilities. And we also know it's best for the people who in childcare care for and educate our people. And we have to take care of our families, our kids, our staff, our team, one another, ourselves in this really important work that we're doing.
Jackie, lots of kudos to you and your team in the chat. Sending hugs, sending great gratitude for courage and all of that. So please join us next time, next week on the 30th at the same time, same place, for our final installment of this webinar. Thanks again to Phil and Jackie and Megan, and we'll turn it over to Victor.
Your feedback is very important to the work that we do. Please remember to provide your feedback on this webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide or scanning the QR code into your web browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.